My name is Samuel, and I am a father of two boys who are on the autism spectrum. My eldest son, Joshua, is 21 years old. My second son, who's also on the spectrum, I have three children, two boys and one girl. My girl attends normal school. She's not on the spectrum, but my two boys are. The eldest one, Joshua, is 21 years old. My second son, Jesse, is 17 years and 8 months. So he will soon be 18 years old. So, and we live at home, three kids, me and my wife, Bethlehem, who we affectionately call Betty. All right. And so that's our whole family. And my wife is Ethiopian. So some of the questions that Dr. Adam has put forward and some of you have put forward is looking at two communities, the Ethiopian and Eritrean community. So I don't know how to say this. Fortunately, in our family, we have both communities. So my wife is Ethiopian, I'm Eritrean. So my children are a combination of both, okay? And the issue of disabilities, and when we say disabilities, that's very broad, but it could be any disabilities, but my kids primarily are on the autism spectrum. And I have both ends. So my eldest son is a low functioning individual on the spectrum. My second son, Jesse, is a high functioning autism child on the spectrum. So he's more verbal, but his maladaptive behaviors are a little bit troublesome. So much so that the MCPS, the Montgomery County Public School System, has lifted his hands and said, all right, we can't continue to offer him support within that school system. And so the only alternative after that in Montgomery County is private schooling. So that's where he is right now. And my elder son is in Rockville High. My younger son is at the Marsha D. Smith School, which is at Gaithersburg.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Samuel, for opening up with that and talking about your personal experiences with your sons, especially having autistic sons and understanding to navigate the different education systems that you've now have to with different schools. That I definitely have plenty of questions on that, but we will digress.
Please, Melissa, make a note of that word, navigate. That is one of the most critical words I had to understand when I came to the United States. Every parent-student meeting or every parent-teacher meeting I attended, they would use this word navigate. And I always wondered why. Why do they say navigate? I mean, we're not shippies or we're not sailing the seven seas or something like that. I mean, why would they say, oh, Mr. Samuel, you need to navigate this? It is only after I began to seek resources, I began to engage with the community through Tsadique and the Institute and with our community, the Ethiopian and Eritrean, I understood why the word navigate is used. So, thank you.
No, thank you. And yeah, I and it's gonna tie into a lot of what we talk about tonight as far as the role of cultural brokers and how it is a navigation, and that is just that navigation itself is it's such a hard thing to do, right? So we'll definitely get into that. So thank you. And I know you mentioned about yourself and your family. Do you mind just briefly discussing your role in the institute itself and what role you play?
So basically, as a cultural broker, the support role that I play is basically an engagement in the sharing of information and best practice and knowledge And because to a certain degree, I am linguistically able to communicate with all three communities, basically English, as well as Amharic, as well as Tigrinya, and also due to the, let me put it this way, due to the challenges that I've faced, especially having an elderly son, a son who turned 21, and some of our community members hit a roadblock. So one of the ways that Senat Institute really helps and utilizes some of, I mean, thanks to Dr. Tulu, and utilizes some of my experiences, is that I usually document a lot of the processes and situations that I navigated, and I'm able to share those in the platforms in our community and basically give them a simplistic step-by-step process. The errors that I went through, the mistakes that I did, situations that I faced, roadblocks that they may face, and how to prepare for it. Because our community, especially, can have a lot of intensity but lack consistency. So let me repeat that. We can have a lot of intensity at the moment, but navigation requires not just intensity, but a lot of consistency. So it's like, I don't know if you know Arabic. The Arabs have a saying, they say, nafas awil. Nafas awil means you have stamina. It means you have stamina because the paperwork, the process, the filing, the dates, all of that, Senat Institute helps to bring that information out. I engage through Senat Institute to help support these initiatives, support this, especially in our cultural community, and helping them understand that we will someday have to come to face these issues. I'm facing them now, you will face them very soon. It's better to be prepared for them, and you can take such steps, you know. So that's a brief answer. Right.
Wow, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And well, thank you for sharing. And so and when we talk, and you mentioned that you have sort of both perspectives, right, of Ethiopian, Eritrean, and you have to navigate the American systems, which I can't imagine given everything else. What do you think, what's the unique part of the Ethiopian and Eritrean community? And maybe you can say the unique part of Ethiopian or Eritrean, or talk about both. Sort of your role in both of them. What do you think what are some maybe unique challenges that you think those face when you try to navigate them through these systems here?
Okay, there are quite a few, but the Ethiopian and Eritrean communities are similar. Culturally, they're very similar. Mindset-wise, also similar. Very, very similar. Okay. Certain things in the community are both a boon and a bane. Let me repeat that. They're both a boon and a bane. What do I mean by that? The Ethiopian and Eritrean communities are very socially cohesive units. This is a great thing in one way. They value their togetherness. They like to have that social cohesion. That's a boon. But it's also a bane because it also comes with a lot of, especially in special needs, comes with a lot of social stigma attached to it. When you come to these events that they organize, I'm giving you a practical example, get-togethers, events that we organize, and you come there with your children who are different, their special needs. So even though it's a socially cohesive unit, the stigma that is attached, especially with special need kids, can create certain types of situations which makes the parents very uncomfortable, or even the other kids who are not special needs very uncomfortable in these social gatherings. And so that causes a bit of misunderstanding and friction. So it's a boon, it's also a bane. The second thing is that because of this social cohesiveness, you have communities that are, the Ethiopian and Eritrean communities are very strong communities together. They support each other and stuff like that. But also, you can have somebody from these communities having lived in the US for so many years, still have a limited ability to communicate outside that community because their primary interaction is only within their community. That's their comfort zone. So to interact outside, so when they have a special need child, the resources are outside the community. They're not within the community. They're outside the community. So this is a very important role that Senat plays. You see? So Senat is able to bridge that so that this social community, I mean, this socially cohesive community, which always is interacting, that's why we see I'll give you a simple aspect of their social cohesiveness, their food. Ethiopians and Eritreans will travel long distances to eat injera. They will travel. I mean, okay, I grew up in India, so I'm not that much attached to injera. But my wife is very traditional and she will go to great lengths. Okay? Great lengths for which I sometimes find very frivolous, very ridiculous. But it's very important. It's very important to her. It's very important to her. So when you have special needs kids, now this is the crux of the matter. When you have special needs kids, you have to go out the community to tap into those resources and to navigate them. And so what happens is for that, you need to be linguistically capable. You need to have certain communication skills, advocacy skills. You need to be able to ask the right questions, to seek the right resources, to, let me just put it blankly, point blank, you need to fill the forms that come. And so this is an issue. So this social cohesion is a boon, but it can also be a bane. It can be a real tough struggle. So Tenat bridges this gap, So it brings the people in, gives them access to that resource, is able to communicate with both ends, and invite people from the English-speaking side to come in and then to act as an intermediary and explain these resources. Because you'd be surprised, Melissa. I mean, when I go to these meetings, when we have gatherings with our community, and I ask the parent, do you do this? Have you done this for your child? Or have you done that? And they say, what's that? And then I say, is your child born in America? They say, yeah, we're all American citizens. So you're surprised that how do they not know this? How do they not know this? They're born here, lived here for so many years, but they don't know. And so it's this cohesiveness and unable to, cross the bridge to the other side because of either linguistic, communicative, writing, those kind of things. There are a few who are able to break out, but it comes at great cost, great sacrifice because it requires commitment. But some prefer to stay within their comfort zone. So that's one major issue there. After that, if you want me to go further, I can go into some of the nitty gritty of what, with this social cohesiveness, the stigma that comes along with it, the effects that come along with it. Another second aspect, which is very, very peculiar, this will maybe there's a lot of research on it as well, is that the Ethiopian and Eritrean communities are very, like many immigrant communities from Africa, are very religiously conservative. They're religiously conservative. So this is a boon, but is also sometimes a bane. So what I mean by that is, to a certain extent, there's also a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy, a lot of love, a lot of mercy. But there is also a certain misunderstanding as to the causes of this, because there are no factual medical sources that explain the causes of some of these disabilities, like autism or whatever. There are different types of theories, but there's no factual medical reason. So this can lead sometimes in different mindsets to attaching some kind of religious connotation to the reasons why the child is being affected, and that at times is a kind of a struggle. That willingness to accept that this can happen to my child, and gaining that acceptance that this is the reality, and now I need to take steps to address it, rather than just attaching some kind of a religious connotation or whatever, because there's no medical reasons. They search, they find out that there are different theories there, but nothing hard, in fact. And it's a spectrum, so there might be different levels, different types of experiences in different families. So that's the second factor that I would use in answering to your question. I hope I did answer your question. But
you definitely did, yes. And I really, something that really resonated with me that you said, the boon versus bane, right? Like it's all in the same coin, but there's two sides of that coin.
Exactly.
Right. And that sort of understanding that dichotomy of like there's good and then there's effects that may be negative.
Exactly. There's that flip side, and you need to somehow navigate that. And Tsadique does a very good job in bringing these sides together and helping contextualize, understand in a language, in a lingo that our people can understand and can accept. And coming from all sides, a religious side as well as a social side, addressing those cohesiveness, and during those events, allowing venues where parents can bring their children and their children have acceptance. So Tsadique works with a lot of our communities, especially the religious communities as well, so that we can gain inroads into accepting, because our community is a very social, cohesive community, and you cannot ignore these structures. You can't. These structures are important in the community. And so what we need to do, and what Tsadique is doing, is creating inroads for acceptance of the special needs community, or families with special needs kids, to interact, to bring them in through asking their families who have kids who are going to school and volunteer to take care of special need kids. So Tsadique does a lot of that, taking kids out, going with them to events, being seen with them. See, that may look very simple here, but in the Ethiopian and Eritrean community, being seen with them itself is a tremendous achievement. Walking with them, engaging with them, playing with them, you see. And because I'll be very honest with you, when my kids were in the Middle East, we were in Dubai, okay? If ever we walked out with our kids in the mall, if my kids reacted, they had a tantrum, they had a fit, they had a meltdown, everybody would be staring at us. Everybody would be staring. People would look at you. People would comment. People would say things. When we arrived in America, nobody said anything. I mean, in the bus, my son shouted. I tried to make him calm down. Somebody looked at me as if I was the special need person and said to me, why are you trying to calm him? Let him be. He's okay. We understand him. Let him be. Wow. So it is an amazing freedom as a parent of a special need child. And that's one of the things that Tsadique brings to the table, acceptance. Now, our community has gone very far in this. Previously, no. If you had children with special need kids, those kids were basically, I wouldn't use the strong word of confinement at home, but to a certain extent, that family wouldn't go out with them. They wouldn't take them to events. They, like I said, our community is very socially cohesive. But when events were there, maybe one member of the family would stay at home. They wouldn't take them with them. They wouldn't go out because of the stigma that would be attached to it.
Wow. Yeah, and to think that especially in the Ethiopian and Eritrean community, that social engagement is so important in the culture, and to be
Yeah,
isolated that for
it's,
disability is
it's very, very. Oh, I can go into I can go into great depth, but I won't take your time. So I won't take your time. Just maybe you have lots of questions, so please do go ahead.
thank
And
you for sharing. So and you talked about sort of the issues, the barriers that happen with this sort of social structure that's so ingrained in the culture. Is there issues that you see as a cultural broker that maybe you didn't mention previously, but issues as far as navigating different systems, or do you see anything specific issues that you feel like are a pattern or you see commonly with families?
okay, so in the questionnaire, I had put down some notes. I won't go extensively to better
Okay.
use our time, but I'll deal with three major factors. Okay. The number one is ignorance. Okay. There's a lot of ignorance. Some of that ignorance is deliberate ignorance. What do I mean by deliberate ignorance? People do not want to confront this issue. So they just put it aside and say, you know what, it's going to go away. The child is young now. Maybe after some time, it will go away, it will go away, it will go away. So what happens is they just let it go on and on and on and on and on. So they don't deal with it head on. So there's a lot of ignorance which is deliberate, and there's ignorance also because people can't build that bridge. The point that I mentioned, to seek the resources that are outside the community. They're in America, but they're in little Eritrea, little Ethiopia in America. So they're in there, and you need to come out of that cocoon so you can see what resources are out there. So there's one level of ignorance. Tsanat's dealing with that through workshops, through forums, through different types of engagements, through Zoom call, video, this thing, seminars. So ignorance is receding. There's an impact there. We're seeing that changing. Okay. The second thing that you have is, like I mentioned before, the social stigma. Now, this stigma also goes in, and there's a study, if I'm not mistaken, it's called it was done by the University of Minnesota. So this is a study because the concentration of the Ethiopian Eritrean community is primarily 3-4 regions in the United States. The DMV area, Los Angeles, California, but the major highest concentration of the community is DMV. But the second highest is around Minnesota. The Minnesota community has not only Ethiopian Eritrean, but a lot of the African community as well, Somalian and a lot of that community. So the prevalence of special needs cases in our communities, Ethiopian, Eritrean, Somali, and all, is quite high in retrospect. I mean, when you look at it comparatively with other communities, okay, it's quite a high degree. And so what happens is there has been a lot of effort on to address ignorance in this area, because some of it, people don't want to address it. They don't want to, this thing, they feel it'll just go away, or it's too much. So the stigma also attached with it, that's the second thing I meant. The stigma attached with it, that is also being dealt with through events like what Senat is doing, walkathons, different types of events, media interviews on YouTube and stuff like that. This is being addressed. But one area that I feel is a challenge is, and which I don't know how it's going to be addressed, but I think as we move along, we are going to look at it, is fatigue. Mental and physical fatigue. Remember, I mentioned to mark that word navigate down, because I'll give you a simple example. My son turned 18 after we came to the United States. And after 18, I was ordering some of his medication. And the pharmacist on the phone said, "Can I speak to Joshua?" And I said, "I'm his father." And she said, "Yes, but he's 18 years old. He's an adult. I'd like to speak to him." I said, "He's special needs." She said, "I'm sorry. I need to speak to him." That's when I understood what is called guardianship.
Mm.
And here is where I say fatigue is going to be the next challenge. After the Ethiopian Eritrean community deal with ignorance, social stigma, the third thing we're going to have to deal with is this mental and physical fatigue. Because that process of guardianship took me 1 year to complete. Okay, yes, it was the pandemic, but the processes, the laws, the paperwork is extensive, because you have to follow United States law. And United States law, the individual right, no matter even if he's a special need child, when you take guardianship, you are taking his individual right. You had a question, Esther? That's why you raised their hand. I think she raised her hand.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I think that's such an interesting point that you made about guardianship or conservatorship, because with a lot of the patients that I have worked with or individuals I've worked with who have individual, like intellectual and developmental disabilities, some of them didn't have guardians and they were underage until like they crossed that barrier of 18. So I just wanted to ask if you had any resources that helped you along the way in getting guardianship for your child.
Miss Esther, I will assist you today, pro bono. Pro bono, okay? All credit to Dr. Adam for inviting me. Pro bono services. All right. But my advice through my trials will be primarily for Montgomery County. Let me just say that in advance. Guardianship in the United States, you have to be informed. Number one, find out which county you want to apply guardianship from. The best help that I found was that I joined nearly every special needs community that I could find, chat group, meetings. I would attend meetings. So during the pandemic, and I'll tell you this, I'll just be honest here. I'll tell you this. So when the pandemic hit and schools closed, so that's why I said fatigue is an issue. When the pandemic hit and schools closed, my kids had to be at home and they cannot do online learning. It was like Mount Everest, very difficult to climb. My wife found it very difficult. I mean, my own daughter who attends a normal school found it very difficult.
Yeah.
So when I noticed that, I had to make certain sacrifices. So I quit my job. So I resigned from my job and I stayed at home so that I could be with them and take care of them. But this is what I want to say. As I attended, I got access to some of these resources, finding out, okay, you can go here, you can go there, you can do this, you can do that. So I'll give you the number one resource if you're in Montgomery County and you want to do guardianship. It is called the Family Help Center at Rockville Court. Okay? In Rockville Courthouse, the new building, not the old one, the new building, you go in, past the security, turn right. Okay, I'm giving you the directions. You turn right. Don't just go there, try and call them first. Because those are lawyers who offer their services pro bono, free of charge. They do not charge a penny. Now, we have some Ethiopian and Eritrean families who are paying thousands to lawyers and still their guardianship has been rejected. Because guardianship, what many families fail to realize is guardianship is a very serious thing in the United States, because these are the rights of the child. He's becoming an adult, so you're taking his rights for everything, financial, all his decisions. So the law stipulates the court will appoint a lawyer. So they appointed a lawyer for my son, Joshua. They appointed a lawyer for him. And it was the pandemic, so the lawyer couldn't come home. But they did tell me, if it wasn't the pandemic, they can even come to your house and see the condition of the child and whether the child really requires guardianship. And then the documentation is immense. I'll give you a simple one, which is very tricky, okay? The court requires you to produce a medical report. Very interesting. Pay attention here. It requires you to produce a medical report. This medical report has to be within a period of 21 days before your appointment or before your submission of your guardianship documentation. So it has to be within that 21 days. You cannot submit a medical report from 6 months ago or from 1 year. So many Ethiopian and Eritrean families, they run into a problem with this, because they may have a Kennedy Krieger or a school medical report from 6 years ago or from 5 years ago. The court will not accept that. So it has to be within a certain period. And there are 4 sets of documents. You as the dad, if the mother is there, the mother, so the dad, mom, the child, and a 4th member who is a witness who does not live in the house. He has to live outside the house. God help you find someone. So because you have to send these documents and that person has to fill. So this person is a witness outside the family, so that there's no, what the court is trying to do is safeguard from manipulation. So you have an outside member who acts as a witness. Yes, I know this family. I know this child. I know the dad. Now this creates fatigue. It is not easy. These 4 documents have to be sent. They have to be sent a specific way by mail. And in the mail, you have to, put a mail order. You have to write a certain way. You have to what. So there's a whole pack on how you're supposed to do it. Now, that's fine. You finish that, your court appointment comes. They will ask you questions. They want to see the child. We did it during the pandemic. So we all had to appear. They want to see me. They want to see my wife. They want to see the lawyers there representing him. And we represented ourselves. I represented the family. So I didn't hire any lawyer. I did it myself. Who helped me? Family Help Center at Rockville Court. They are great. Those lawyers do a great work. And they do free of charge. They are fantastic. I'm about to embark on the 2nd round now because my 2nd son, he's turning 18. So I already called them, because you need to call them at least a month in advance, because they do it free of charge and they're always booked and they have their own careers. So they're doing it. Listen, now here is why I said fatigue will be our next challenge. When you gain guardianship, Miss Esther, you can make this down as a note for anyone who you're supporting. When you do guardianship, every year you have to renew that guardianship. Here's the tricky part. When you renew it, the court will send you a set of documents. Did you take him to the doctor? Did you go for dental? Where did he spend his summer? So you have to make notes of different timelines. Fill that out. So I keep dates. So I keep a whole file. Basically, when I took him to the dentist, who's his dentist? When I took him to the hospital, summer, where did he go? Which programs did he attend? And you send that on time. You should not delay on time to the court register at Rockville. You submit it. They're very professional. They go through it. They stamp. They say thank you. After a review of a couple of days, I don't know what checking they do, they send you a renewal of your guardianship. So where do Ethiopian and Eritrean families go haywire on this? Let's say they complete the guardianship. They travel to Ethiopia on vacation. They forget the date. The state has the power to revoke your guardianship. Now that is very dangerous. And I have not personally met one, but I have heard of some families where that has happened because they have not renewed their documentation. They have not sent that renewal. But here is the beauty of Montgomery County or Rockville. Okay. When you do the guardianship, you will get a call from a court-appointed assistant who will ask you, do you want my assistant to remind you when your renewal is about to happen? So I said, yes, why not? So I have her number on her phone, on my phone. So about 1 week before I receive that renewal, but I usually keep separate dates, she calls me and says, don't forget your renewal is about to come. I usually tell her I've done it already. She says, oh, brilliant, brilliant, very good. But it's better to be safe. Or sometimes you forget the dates when you took your son to the dentist or to the doctor or to a summer. If you miss those dates and your dates go haywire, it can get you into slight of an issue if they recheck, if they call the dentist, if they call the doctor and they find out you've actually not taken him for his medical or not taken, you can run into some issues. So that's just there. So hope that answers your question. I think that was long-winded, but anyway.
No, I mean, I love the perspective because you're putting it, and I'm finding all these ties to how you are as a cultural broker and thinking about how you even have to have challenges in navigating these.
It's not easy. The fatigue level.
Right.
And let me just say this, honestly, one of the questions, that was put to me was, what challenges do you see coming forward? And this aspect of fatigue, because you have to renew, you have to go, you have to document, you have to do this. And, it's not some fly-by day, you can get up in the morning and say, oh, let me just go ahead and do this. You can't. You have to be prepared beforehand. You have to get your documentation right. Maybe you certainly get a resource, okay? You get funding. But then suddenly you find out that where you applied, they don't have staffing, or the staff has to change who's been working with your son. The fatigue there is to find another staff member, to summer programs. Let me just put another one, summer programs. Because many Ethiopian and Eritrean families, as soon as summer hits, they're in pandemonium. Where do I take my kids? School is closed. So Tsadique helps in this aspect. We inform them where the resources are, where this thing. And I think you must have deduced by now that, once I start talking about special needs, I just keep on going on, So you just need to stop me. Because Summer Kids has been a big project of mine. I have been like Woody Woodpecker on many of these summer camps, and many of them will tell you we're fully booked. I'm sorry. We're fully booked. You can't. Come 6 months, come 8 months. 8 months in advance, 6 months in advance. So every type of fair that would be there, I would attend, meet people, until finally I found one of the team leads, the head of the Montgomery Parks and Recreation. Okay. I took her card, became her friend, and now one of my sons, every summer, he's booked. So he's fine. See, I have a dilemma. I have 2 blessings instead of 1. So 2 sons, and both of them can't go to the same summer camp. Joshua and Jesse can't go because it will be like, it will be pandemonium if both of them are there, because they both get on each other's nerves. So I have to send them to separate summer camps. So you have to, any camp, it's 2-3 months in advance that you have to prepare. Transportation. If they're taking medication, you have to prepare in advance. Getting a haircut. Getting a dentist. Now, you'd be surprised. Where does a special needs, now mark my words, not a child, a young adult go for dental treatment?
And that is, I've heard the dentist has been one of the hardest places.
So I have made appointments 1-2 months in advance, and the day of my appointment, suddenly the dentist has canceled and said, sorry, your son is already 19. I'm actually a pediatric dentist. I can't see him now. And they waited till the last day to do that. So you face these kind of frustrations, and this is why fatigue comes in. And so my son was in pain. I mean, dental pain. At night, we couldn't sleep. He was crying. It was very, very painful. What do? Nobody can treat him. It's very difficult. If you go to Maryland Oral Surgeons, which does dental work with anesthesia, you need at least a 3-month appointment. So what was I told? Okay, Mr. Samuel, your only resource is University of Maryland Dental School in Baltimore. Now, this might sound very humorous, but let me just help you, okay? Have you ever called University of Maryland Dental Department in Baltimore? Have you ever called them? When you call them, I'm saying this humorously now, but that time it wasn't funny. When you call them, the first thing that the machine operator actually talks about is parking. Doesn't tell you about dental. Tells you about where the parking is. I never understood why. Until I went there. Oh my goodness.
I'm close to University of Maryland.
I mean, the one in Baltimore, the dental office there. Oh my goodness. Where do you park? Where do you go? And then you walk, and I have a special needs child who's shouting, crying. And by the time I reach there, I mean, there are different floors. So you don't know where to go. You go down, you go up. The lady even didn't bat an eyelid. She just looked at me and said, come in October. I said, ma'am, this is an emergency. She said, I know. The only place that we have is to, otherwise, go up to such and such a floor, speak to that lady, but I can only take an appointment. And that was, I think, about 4 months earlier that she told me come in October. So she was saying that's the only time I have, otherwise, I'm sorry. I went up to the emergency supposedly place, and that lady, I mean, the only thing that I could do was break down. But I told the lady, please, can you help me? She said, see, Mr. Samuel, this is the only way you can make it. She said, you can take your chances and come as early as possible. It's a first come, first serve. And that's the word, right terminology. First come, first serve. So I said, okay, good. First come, first serve. I can come early in the morning. I told her, give me a ballpark figure. What do you mean by early? Like, how early should I come? She said, well, we have people coming in at 4 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning, 5. I said, are you serious? In Baltimore, you want me to come at 4 a.m.? She said, people do come. Because it's the first come, first serve. So I said, if I come at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., can I actually get a doctor? She said, I don't know. We cannot guarantee. Because these are students. These are dental students who do the work. So basically, it was like looking for Alibaba's cave. I mean, it was, it wasn't worth the. So I said, all right. Even if I come at 4 a.m., there's no resource. I mean, I can't guarantee that he'll be seen. She said, no, suppose 5 or 6 people are there. Sometimes the dental student will come and just do 2 or 3 procedures, and that's it. And can he do it on a special need child with anesthesia? We don't. Well, the way I finally got it done is a story for another day. I used the English have a word, they call it skullduggery. I used some skullduggery, So what I did is what I did is the pediatric dentist who rejected me on that same day didn't actually understand what it means to do that to a parent who had waited 1 month. I blogged and I commented on what that dentist had done. And lo and behold, surprisingly, after my brief critique, should I put it mildly, okay, I got a call from that office. Oh, Mr. Samuel, we're sorry, we're blah, 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 blah. I said, don't give me the Encyclopedia Britannica. Tell me what you can do for me. She said, oh, we know a doctor who can see your son. And that's how I found the dentist who all my kids go to today. They don't mind if he shouts, screams, whatever, and they don't mind if he's an adult special needs. There are very few dental providers who cater to adult special needs. Anesthesia, or with anesthetic, or with laughing gas, or with what do you call it, or with different types of tools and resources. So that's
thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I can't. Thinking that is mind blowing. And I want to make sure we are respectful of time. So I know we only have a couple more minutes and 7 minutes. But I think, and I really appreciate all of, your personal pieces. They're just so powerful. A question that I think is really important that I think you've already sort of touched on, but is thinking about what the most important aspects of being a cultural broker is, right? So you said navigating these, having the stamina and the strength and the persistence and the consistency to navigate these. Are there any other very important aspects? And
there are two. Yes, there are two. One, we are doing. Senat is doing. And there are many others also who are moving in this direction, and that is to communicate. We need to get our stories out there, our experiences, our best practices. Okay, we need to get it out there, and the Japanese. I worked for the Japanese for some time. The Japanese have a saying. They call it hoijunka. So this is one of the Kaizen Toyota methodologies. So what they mean is standardization. So when you have a best practice, you make sure that you communicate that best practice. You standardize it. So by getting these stories out, that's what Sanat is doing. And as a cultural broker, that's what we want to do. We want to communicate. We want to tell our stories. When you have a victory, tell. When you have a challenge, tell. When you are going through something, tell. You're not alone, tell. It impacts emotionally, it impacts socially, it impacts tremendously throughout the community. So that's the first thing, we communicate. The second area where it might seem small or mild or what do you call it, but I mean, it might seem like nitty gritty, but I think, this will go a long way in helping. And I've shared this with a few others of our community as well. Let me see, I wrote that paperwork. paperwork. Just having somebody, just with a table, invite our community and say, okay, what paperwork do you have? Let's go to the online, let's go to the website, let's help you fill it out. Okay. Wow. So if you go to MCPS schools, their website, okay, there is a drop-down menu where people can access in Amharic. So the Ethiopian community can see announcements, different types of seminars in MCPS. They can access that information in Amharic. So it's provided in Vietnamese, in Hindi, in Nepali, in a lot of that lingua franca is provisionally provided. In the special needs community, that is not there to a certain extent. Surface level it is there, but a large extent, especially when you delve deep. And because I'll give you an honest example. What are we aiming for here? What are we? Independence. The child should be able to be independent to a certain degree, transition into that. Okay. There's limited resources in their language. So what am I trying to say? If we cannot bridge that gap for them to come out of it, can we make a bridge from the English speaking community into the Ethiopian and Eritrean community? Come in their language and communicate with them. And that is what Sanat is doing. Now, the paperwork aspect, that requires a little bit more resources. I've discussed it with a few people, some people who are professionals, who can navigate the IT, the forms, this. I'll give you a simple example. Every year for my son to attend different summer camps, there is a respite form that I have to fill. Now, this respite documentation is nearly 21 pages. This is 21 pages. Yes, 21 pages. 21 pages, a medical report, IEP, behavioral plan, and what else does it require? My identification, my wife's signatures, everything. And you make the packet and you send it to the respite coordination committee. You have to do this every year. Now, there are some families who are not. We're not going to be able to do this. There have been some extreme cases. I've met some families where, because the situation has just gone so far, and maybe the family unit has been affected, so the child is being raised by one member of the family, and then just becomes so overwhelming that the state itself organizes a coordinator to do the paperwork and to do that for that individual. But these are only cases which have reached an extreme level. The mom has collapsed, the child they've been unable to control the child, and and it's a single mom, and she doesn't know how to access these resources. The state has provided somebody to help with that paperwork. This paperwork issue, as we go on, because when you have to access the funding, you need to provide the documentation. Many members of our community might get the resource, but when they see the documentation, this fatigue takes over. This daunting thing takes over. Oh my goodness, how am I going to fill this? How am I going to fill that? How am I going to? And you need to send it in a certain way. So sometimes I think to myself, if we really want to help our community, we just need to announce that we're going to have a day of documentation. We're going to do all your paperwork for you. So bring your child, bring these documents, and we're going to help you. Let's say you want to do LISS list, right. Or let's say you want to apply for autism waiver. Okay, let's get the documents done. Let's get this done. Make a file for you. You take it home, so that's your file. And, maybe have an open day of just a documentation day where we have professionals from our community just, type for people, do the letter work, give them important dates, things like that, and then send them away with all that information. So.
Wow, and I think you've already touched on this, but the last question was really what recommendations did you have for the Sanat Institute, and how they can better engage families in this work, and how cultural brokers can sort of create some of these things for families. You said documentation day. It sounds very good. Do you have any other recommendations that you have?
Events, more events where they come together. Memorial Day is famous for barbecues and things like that. Special needs barbecue. That I'll give you a simple example. Now I am trying my best to recommend. You see, many Americans. See, now this is where you have this culture, where you need a cultural broker. I'll give you a simple example. Okay, Americans love to express what's in their heart on their cars. They love to express it on their cars. Dog mom, pet so and so, lacrosse, this, that. I love my pug. I love my poo. My son is a Marine. My mom is this. My dad is this. Bigfoot, Woody Woodpecker, Tom and Jerry. What's on their heart is on their car.
Wow.
Okay? The car is an expression of his character, what he loves, what he likes. I'm trying my best. I've tried a couple of weeks ago, but I'm trying. We cultural brokers hopefully will succeed. All right? Trying to get our community to have stickers that encourage special needs on their cars. When I shared this with another person who's one of similar cultural brokers, they said, Samuel, our community will stick that in their car? No way. I said, you know what? Why not? It will help communicate. It will remove the stigma. It will, what do you call it? We're not ashamed of having kids with this thing. You know what? They said, Samuel, that's when we reach that bridge, we'll cross it. I said, why not propose it now? Why not make stickers now in the Amharic language? Or in Tigrinya, which is the Eritrean language, stickers for Autism Day, or stickers, My son's different. My daughter is different,
Yeah.
We're different. And we're loved, we're different, stuff like that, something in our language. But guess what? It's in choppy waters. But what I'm trying to say is this will help communicate. But so these are small things, but these are some of the challenges that I think slowly by slowly we'll begin to contend with, deal with, and finding out that you don't need to overwhelm and lose hope. You're not alone. There are other individuals who go through the same thing. Some of them, I mean, I once was really very just tired, just because it just makes you exhausted sometimes. And you go through a lot of setbacks. I've gone through some very painful ones as well. And suddenly one time I was just thinking how long this is going to go on and things like that. And there was a bus attendant with my son. She was dropping him off. I was there at the bus stop, and she said, "Hi, you have a lovely son." I said, "Yeah, thank you. I don't have one. I have two." Especially, she said, "You have two? Oh, okay." She said, "I have three." So, so when you think that oh my goodness, I've got these two, I have to run, I have to do this, make so much sacrifice, and then you meet somebody who has three, and what, she has a smile, she's going through a very difficult time, it's very hard mentally and things like that, and then you wonder about medication is a whole new different subject. I won't deal with that. But that itself is a different aspect, when you deal with the pharmaceutical industry and medication and all of that, with behavioral plans, teachers changing, staffing shortages. Oh my goodness. And when you find someone who's really good and then you want to continue, and then that person suddenly leaves, changes, Your child can't handle transition, doesn't know we were. This is some of the challenges, Cultural brokers can help connect to resources, empower families, tell them that they're not alone, communicate with them, and basically, help them fight another day.